Well, good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be here this evening. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us. And of course, I am also simulcasting through the Wisdom Audio app. And thank you to all my amazing listeners that are currently on. Excuse me. I obviously have an amazing guest on today, and this is her second appearance. She was previously on my podcast on July 16th of 2022. And before I technically had an author series. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her. Her first debut novel, Poetic Potential, Sparking Change and Empowerment Through Poetry, was published in 2021. There is obviously a story behind her story, and really it is her hope to spread the power of poetry of female voices around the world. And she's just so charming. I'm so excited to introduce her. Amanda Karch, welcome back to the Story That Inspires Us podcast.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm very excited for our conversation.
Me too. So I want to, and I know that our listeners can't see this, but I am holding up one of Amanda's book, which I absolutely love. This is her other book called Her Favorite Color Was Sunshine Yellow. And just the poetry in here, I'm always amazed at the talent of authors. Always amazed how an avid writer can sit down and just with maybe the thoughts of the day and write such an engaging poetry book. Like that it honestly kind of blows me away.
So that makes me so happy to hear. I mean, that book is forever going to be, it's definitely always going to have a special place in my heart, because even though I know that my writing and my poetry has grown so much since I published that book has so much meaning to me. The subject matter, the fact that it was the first piece of work that I really put out into the world. And even now, when people buy my book and they'll leave reviews about how, oh, this is a perfect book to give to one of my best friends, or this really resonated with me. All of those comments really just mean so much to me. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I would imagine too, when you see a review like that and reading it, that really is must make you feel like your hope is being fulfilled really on a daily basis, because that's the premise behind your poetry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was always really afraid to share my writing with the world, because I was always afraid of what people would think, because I mean, not everybody understands the love and passion for writing. So I was really scared to put it out into the world originally. But just hearing those few voices who are saying that this is exactly what I was feeling, but I couldn't put into words, or this describes something that I've experienced before, this is something that I'm going through right now. All of those emotions and thoughts really just make any potential negativity, it makes it all worth it.
And I am so glad that you said that, because one of the premise of stories, as I've always said, is the story behind the story. And a couple times already you've mentioned in your prior podcasts that fear, not just fear, but also the fear of being scared and what people may think when you share your poetry with the world. And that can be very personal for many people. What would you say is one thing that you can say to somebody out there right now about sharing your story, about honoring your journey?
Yeah, so I think that going back to the idea of being scared of sharing your writing, I think that to be a writer, you have to become comfortable with rejection, because if I've learned anything in the past year or so of starting to submit my work to literary journals and magazines that you get very comfortable with rejection letter coming pretty frequently, because there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different stories, a lot of different pieces of writing, and obviously all of these journals and magazines can't take everybody. So you definitely have to become comfortable with rejection. But when it comes to sharing your story, this is something that I talk a lot about on social media, and it's a big theme of my writing as well, is that no matter what people are going to say, your story and your voice matters. There's all of this push in the literary world to really spread diverse voices, diverse thoughts in the industry, because it's a predominantly white and male industry. And so this idea of putting your thoughts out there, stories out there, even if you think that other people aren't going to understand it, like, you have to understand that your story matters too, because everybody deserves to see themselves represented in a book, in poetry, in anything in the world. And so that's something that I really try to emphasize, and it's a really important cause to me.
So speaking of poetry, and you would mention, you have to be comfortable with rejection. And what popped into my head was the rejection journal. I don't know why, but I did want to share that with you. And I think what comes up for me when I hear that, or even when I feel that, and I can imagine you getting your mail, and maybe this one particular news outlet that you submitted it to, like that was the one you want, and you received the rejection part of it. As with accepting rejection, what do you take away, or what do you take away with that rejection? Have you learned something from it?
Yeah, so I think that for me personally, I've always had a tough time with revision and editing my own work. It's just a process that I'm still learning to get more comfortable with. I like first drafts and I like messy drafts, but then sometimes the process of going through and trying to make a piece of work better is hard, because there are so many pieces of my work that I already like, and I don't want to take away from what it's already done. But I think what we're taught is that vision is just an apple that comes with writing. You have to get comfortable kind of tearing apart your work and restructuring it, finding other ones that work with. I've kind of learned that there's a way you can do revision, and better for some people than others. I mean, sometimes I just like cutting apart my poems line by line to order them. That makes things work better. But really, really, I think that learn that it's okay to make changes and not have a perfect person, because definitely it's the whole process of writing is really what makes it worth it.
Right, that process. And just to let you know, you're going a little bit in and out on the audio.
Let me try that again.
And then we'll get back. And this is, I always say, this is the beauty of live podcasting, and that's okay. We make adjustments. You can hear me okay, correct? Okay. And we're just
Does that sound better?
Yeah, that sounds much better. Thank you. So what I got out of what you were saying is, as you go through that process, you always learn something from it. And if your voice matters that much, and we know that it does, your story may not be what they want, but you are still fulfilled in what you've written. And right. I think that's another important aspect of it for anyone who's like starting in the process of writing. And I can certainly, when you were talking about, when your writing goes through editing, I can remember one specific thing that I wrote. I was co-author in a project. I actually been in 16 co-authored projects. And this one particular time, my copy was kind of chopped up, and I'm like, huh, wait a minute here, what is going on? But then I kind of sat back for a moment, and what occurred to me is that sometimes the rejection part of it, or whatever I was feeling in that moment, the other person, I mean, it's all subjective, I think, to a certain point. And I'm okay with that, but sometimes that can be the best form of flattery. So
Yeah,
that's how I kind of took it and how I dealt with that, because I'm sure along the road now, that's 1 out of 16. I think that's pretty darn good. But I if I'm going to be putting myself in that position, I need to be, as you said, be comfortable with that rejection or how somebody views my work.
exactly. And another thing that goes hand in hand with learning to be comfortable with rejection is definitely patience. I am not a very patient person, and I've kind of been needing to come to terms with the fact that you just need to settle in, and eventually your pieces are going to find the home that they're meant to be in, even if that means rewriting them 30 times before they finally find their home. That's something that I still need to come to terms with, but am slowly starting to learn through this whole process, because you do get a lot of rejection, but when they finally find a place to call home, it makes it all worth it.
I like how you said that, when it finally finds a home. That is kind of neat. Now, I know that you also do different types of workshops. Can you describe with us, particularly what it was like for you, but also what your attendees got out of attending one of your workshops?
Yeah, so workshops are definitely something pretty new in my wheelhouse, but I think it was such an incredible experience. It was really intimate, so a small group of girls, high school age, which I think is really important because that's such a time where we're going through so many different struggles as teenage girls. There's everything to do with friendships and relationships, but then also just internal struggles too. It's a tough period of time. And I think at that point in time is really where we need to regain that feeling of self-confidence and self-worth, and feeling like, again, like our stories and our voices matter. And so my method for the workshop is really to go through different poetry prompts to really get to this place of coming out stronger on the other side. So what I've taken to doing is having different free writes on both negative and positive experiences. So everybody can kind of pick where they want to go from there. And then really thinking about what it means to be a woman, like what words, traits, characteristics, experiences, feelings, anything that comes to mind when you think of that. And then through that whole process of writing and doing different types of poetry and free writes, then ultimately at the end, when you go back to write about that negative experience that you first wrote about, you usually turn out to have a different kind of perspective on that event. And you learn to take either lessons away from it, or you see it in a more positive light, or that there's something that you really took away as a stronger person by the end of it. And this is something that I've definitely used myself. I mean, this type of like free writing to poetry prompt to really coming to the sense of clarity. That's definitely something that I use pretty frequently. It's not just something that I teach, it's something that I actually use in practice. And it's pretty incredible seeing what writing can do for you. And that's what I'm a really strong proponent of, that writing can really do all sorts of powerful things if you really just have the open mind to let it happen.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that was kind of going to be my next question about the poetry prompts. So when you say poetry prompts, would that be similar to journal prompts? You mentioned negative, positive experiences. Is that what you are referring to as a poetry prompt?
Yeah, I mean, poetry prompts can be any sort of thing. They can be, you could have a journal prompt that you could use as a poetry prompt and vice versa. It's just having a starting point really to go from, but there's no definitive answer on where you go from there. I mean, I've started free writes, and where I began in my first line and then at the end, and I'm like, I don't really know how I got from A to Z, but somehow we got here. But it's really cool seeing how that whole process works.
That does sound good. It sounds very creative, like very impromptu. For instance, I am thinking of the author series, right? All these amazing books over here, are from authors that have been on or will be on. And when I read the book, so as a reader, when you're describing that, it's like you can imagine or picture it maybe in a movie segment, for instance, maybe reading, let's say, a romance novel. You imagine the characters and where they're going, the different struggles that they have. Would you say that when you are working with different, different poetry prompts, has there been like one genre or thing that you always go to, like maybe if you're stuck, like a writer's block type of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, my poetry in general tends to default to a few different themes. So love poetry is forever going to be my favorite. It's going to be always be a special place in my heart. That's what Her Favorite Color Was Sunshine Yellow is all about. Mm-hmm. But more recently, in the past couple of years, it's turned to more themes of feminism, empowerment, and even in the last 6 to 8 months or so, it's been themes of really reclaiming identity and figuring out kind of who you are as a person and what you want to do. That's definitely been a big theme of mine. But really, when it comes to different poetry prompts and things I'm trying to turn to for inspiration, there isn't necessarily a set theme that I go to. And sometimes that's the fun of it. And it really allows you to see where you can go from different maybe genres that you wouldn't normally pick up. Like I'll read books of, say, sonnets, which are not something I would ever really write. But sometimes you pick out lines of a different poet that really inspire something else from you. I mean, that's what I was just doing earlier today. I was writing a poem, but I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. So I went on to the American Academy of Poets, the Poem a Day website, and I picked a random date and I found a poem. And I was like, okay, I have an idea that I can really go off from here. And sometimes that's like the best way to jumpstart and get over writer's block, is just throw yourself into a new situation.
Okay, so it's, in other words, you're immersing yourself in inspiration from other poets.
Yes, definitely.
Let me ask you this. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Who is your favorite poet? Other than Karch?
That is definitely a tough one. I have lots of favorite poets, but if I had to narrow it down to a few, I would say Margaret Atwood, Natalie Diaz. One of my more recent books that I've read was by Safia El-Hilo, Girls That Never Die. That one was, I loved that, and I wanted to replicate it all myself, but I couldn't. But just, I've been trying to read a lot more of modern female poets, because when we're in school, that's not really what we learn. We learn, as I say, like all of the dead white guys, like all of the people like Shakespeare and Walt Whitman and people like that. And they are phenomenal writers, don't get me wrong, but I think it's part of the reason why people don't really appreciate poetry the way that they could, because a lot of people just don't see themselves in the types of work that we're learning. And I mean, I definitely didn't see myself in the writers that we were studying in school, but all of this individual reading on my own was where I found people that I look up to as role models in the writing world.
Now I want to go back a moment to the poem of the day. What is the name of the website where you get that at?
So it's on poets.org. They every day they curate a different poem, and it's there's a person who is kind of the curator for, I'm pretty sure, the year, but don't quote me on that one. But it's really cool to get like a daily dose of poetry. I think you can get it sent to your email every day, so kind of have something to start the day off right. But every once in a while I'll turn there for inspiration, because you never know what kind of new voice that you're going to find.
And what if that poet who you received that email in at one point felt as you did?
Yeah, so I mean, today I decided to arbitrarily pick a random date. So I picked my birthday from last year, and I found the poem Sunflowers by Jenny George, who I had never heard of, but the poem really spoke to me, and it really gave me a good starting point to write my own poem for the day. I've been doing this project through Tupelo Press, which is a great independent publisher of poetry and other writing. And for the month of January, I've been working on writing 30 poems in 30 days. So a lot of writing, but it's been a good way to kind of jumpstart my daily writing habit again after the holidays kind of take up a lot of time and take away from other things that you want to do. So it's been a good way to get back into that writing habit. And today needed a little extra dose of inspiration, and that's where I ended up.
I think that is, in and of itself, is very inspirational. 30 poems in 30 days. I would say that you wanted to kind of challenge yourself, maybe push yourself a little bit past what maybe you thought you could handle.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in the last year or so, I've gotten pretty good about getting myself into a better writing habit, but that doesn't always mean writing a poem a day. Sometimes that's just journaling, rewriting, something like that, just getting ideas. But having to actually physically write a poem every day has definitely been a challenge, but it's been a really cool experience, because you find different ways to draw inspiration from the world around you, because sometimes the way that you were able to start a poem the day before just does not work on a different day. So it's been a really interesting process, but definitely one I'm appreciative of.
May I read a little something to you out of your book?
Yeah.
Because I always, and by the way, I had to take out all my stickies. This was like loaded with stickies, but I left my little bookmark in there. What you said on page 19, I always come back to it, and I don't know why. Don't be afraid to be the one who loves the most.
Yeah, that one. I love that one.
Now, me reading that back to you, is that maybe a little, I don't want to say odd, but is that weird in a sense that I'm reading to you something that you wrote, and then you'll understand the next question.
I honestly love it because I still, as much as I've gotten comfortable with sharing my writing, I'm still trying to find the right way to read it out loud and perform it in front of people. So I like hearing other people read it because it kind of gives me ideas of how I can be reading my work, if that makes sense.
Yes, because I think a lot of times when you read something back to yourself out loud, I will often do that a lot before I submit one of my co-authored projects. And I, of course, listen back to it. And the way in certain parts of it where I may pause or where I may add, some more emphasis on my voice. And I even, oh my God, I have to share this because I'm cracking up just thinking about it. What I do sometimes too, and by the way, I kind of want to segue for just a moment and thank all of our amazing listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. You guys are what makes all of this possible. I absolutely love what I do. And I hope you love this conversation. I know you do, with Amanda. So Amanda, what I wanted to share with you, and of course, if people go back to the stories website or go to YouTube tomorrow and see this video, this is what I do, and it cracks me up. If I'm like getting stuck, go up to the camera and I go, "Hey, how you doing?" And it cracks me up. And then I'm like, okay, now I can. I think there's a fear sometimes when you're recording your own voice and reading.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share that if anybody out there is like looking for a way to kind of get past that little hump when you're, trying to read or, you're recording something. Hey, how you doing? It'll crack you up. Trust me. Anyways, the next little thing that I wanted to read from you, and oh, here it is. This I love. Our eyes say it all. What are your eyes saying right now? What do you want to share with us that says it all?
I just wondering what types of lines and writing of mine with other people. I mean, that no.
We're having issues with the sound again. I just wanted to alert you. But just bear with us, everyone. We'll get this straightened out. And looks like she's double checking her connections.
Does that sound better?
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know what's happening. It's always technology. So what I was saying is that I always know what types of lines and pieces of my writing resonate with me, but I love hearing what other people pick out because it's not always the same. It's not always the same pieces, but it's always amazing seeing really what everybody else finds to be the most moving or inspirational, and if it's other types of poetry or anything like that. I always love just hearing what people's favorite parts are.
And there are many favorite parts in this book that I absolutely love. And I just lost my spot. If I get back to it and find it quick enough, I will share that again with you. Amanda, are you going to be holding any, have you ever considered doing workshops with adults?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely considered it. I don't have any plans in the works currently, but I have definitely some ideas on different workshops that I could have. I'm currently speaking with one of my friends on a potential collaboration for different workshops, but too early in the stages to really give any more information than that. But yeah, because I think that everybody can benefit from writing. I mean, a lot of my audience is a younger demographic, high school, college, post-grad kind of age range, but writing is something that is accessible to anybody, and anybody can use its benefits. And I think that it's something that I'm always going to have in my life, and I think that anybody can make use of it and enjoy it as well.
And enjoy it. I am sure they will. Amanda, how can our viewers and listeners get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Instagram with an occasional Twitter presence as well recently. But both of those handles are at AKK Writing. And my website is akkwriting.com. So just remember AKK Writing, you can find me anywhere. But yeah, so on my website, you can find links to other work that I've published and my book and blog and all of that good stuff. And my email is there in case anybody ever wants to reach out as well. Happy to talk.
Oh my gosh, that is wonderful. And of course, I will make sure all of that information is in the show notes. This has been such a pleasure to chat with you again about your writing, your love for poetry, and the different process that you go through. I'm just going to take my thing out of here real quickly because I do want to show your book again. Her favorite color was sunshine yellow. I am telling you, if you've ever wanted to be inspired by poetry, this is such a beautiful book from a beautiful young lady. And this is what Stories is all about. Oh my gosh, Amanda, thank you so much. I hope you, of course, keep us posted on where you are in your journey, maybe another workshop that's coming up, so that we can get the word out to our viewers and listeners. Thank you so much for being here today. I've so enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me as well. Thank you so much for having me and for all of your kind words. And yeah, if anybody wants a copy, I've got plenty of copies of my book on my shelf that are waiting to be mailed out.
See, that's right. You have to plug yourself. And let me tell you, this would make a great gift. There's the kind of that holiday coming up in February 14th for all my amazing listeners out there. I, of course, will make sure that gets in the show notes as well. Really, this would make such a beautiful and really heartfelt Valentine's gift for your Valentine's, because with, Cupid, the pinks, the reds, and all that, it would be nice to have some sunshine yellow. Hey, everyone.
Exactly.
Absolutely. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us. Today, of course, I was inspired by this amazing young woman, Amanda Karch. Go connect with her. As she said, she's on Instagram, Twitter, at AKK Writing. And remember, everyone, somebody out there has a story to share. And I've made some amazing connections, and I know that I'm always talking about wisdom. This really has been the mecca for me to engage, connect, and collaborate. If you have a story to share, it's that important. Please contact me. I would love to have you on as a guest. Let's have that conversation. And remember, your story matters. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. And we will see you again real soon. Bye for now.